Good evening and welcome to yet another episode of Beating COVID-19. And this is another episode of COVID-19, the global mental pandemic, or the pandemic state of mind, or the COVID mental pandemic. Today we're going to talk about something very interesting, and it's particularly an interesting topic because it concerns an interesting subject. Today, the title is about a God and why. Why and why God, or a God and why? That's more or less like that. In today's subject, because we're talking about mental well-being, today we'll focus a lot about spiritual the spiritual facet of the mental well-being of a person, and examine the concept of, is there a God and why? Okay, as this pandemic has continued, we have seen the rise of science. Science has provided us with cues and clues and examples and papers and statistics and logical understanding and microscopic evidence, DNA analysis. The science has provided us with projective analysis, telling us what to project, models that tell us numbers of fatalities and infections. All of this science has brought. But science cannot replace mental state of mind. It cannot replace the pandemic state of mind. And because science is open-ended, it's open to your interpretation, it has also opened up the door for various interpretations of facts, creating lots of fake news and conjecture and unknown stuff. And all of that is moving in the airwaves, in the social media circles, it's moving in the internet, it's moving all over the place with no control. I'm sure most of the social media firms are trying to block spam and fake news and so on and so forth, but that still gets along. If it's out of Facebook, it's in WhatsApp. If it's out of WhatsApp, it's in Telegram. If it's out of Telegram, it's in YouTube. If it's out of YouTube, it's on the mainstream media. If it's out of the mainstream media, it's on the lamestream media. If it's out of that media, it's in the gutter press. If it's out of the gutter press, it's in the papers. It's broadcasted over conspiracy news outlets. I mean, bad news will travel faster than good news on any given day. And a lie will overtake them all and leave them standing. So today we're going to talk about a God and why. And I think for me, the spiritual well-being of a person is that which gives them a level of satisfaction, some contentment. And I don't want to give up the word today, right now. I'll give it at the very end of this session. And I want to first focus on zooming out from the COVID pandemic and zooming out and really giving a very wide arc and a very wide image, going rather than zeroing in and zooming into the tiny minutiae, the tiny numbers. I want to zoom out and just put a few facts in front of you, some science. Number one, the annual birth rate in Kenya is 22.6 children per thousand. That's the annual birth rate in Kenya. The annual death rate in Kenya is 6.7 people per thousand, which means in a population of 50 million, I think approximately 1.13 million children will be born. If the math is right, yeah. And in a population of the same size, 335,000 people will die, leaving a net increase in population of 795,000 on any given year. And these statistics are found in the 2018, I think it's 2018 census or something like that. They are found there. There's some statistics which we shall put the links in the description showing those numbers, where we got them from. Now, the world birth rate is 18.5 to 1,000 people. Therefore, in a population of 7.8 billion, 144.3 million children will be born. And out of that, the death rate is a 7.8 per thousand, meaning about 60.84 million people will die this year. The net difference is 83.46 million for the favor of those living. And that's in a global sense. If in this year we're going to have a net difference between those who are born and those who die of 795,000, if we subtract 50 who died of COVID, it's, yes, I'll leave you to think about what that is. Just zooming out, that's perspective. That should tell you to ask yourself one question. Why are we focusing so much to the peril of everyone else, a very tiny part of the population? It's very interesting that a flood in Budalangi took away 300 people. 6 times the number of COVID deaths in this country. Cholera in the northern part of Kenya, in Turkana and Marsabit, have taken a large number of people, almost equivalent to the total number of COVID deaths in this country. I'm not saying that we shouldn't take COVID-19 seriously. What I'm saying is that let's go back to the state of mind that we were talking about yesterday. What is our state of mind? And that's why today the subject is about our God and why. Now, I'm a Christian, so I'll go to my book of reference, and I'm sure some of you maybe are Muslims, and you'll go to your Quran, and Indians will go to the Bravidat and whatever. They will go to the books, and they will find in those books words of wisdom for times like this. I'd say that in Psalms 36 verse 9, the Bible says that for with you is the fountain of life, and in your light we see life. That is speaking of God, that the fountain of life is in God, and through God we see life. God's light illuminates life for us. Adam's name, Adam, is symbolic of making something. We were created to make something. And Eve's name, which Adam gave her, means a life spring or a life giver or a mother of all things. Therefore, life is sacred. Life is sacred, whether, as I said, birth and death. The birth of children is a sacred act. It's sacred. We always say that a child is a gift from God. And those who die in the faith go to a better place. A life well lived is also a gift from God. Recently, we lost Ravi Zacharias, and for those of you who know him, and today, incidentally, I have quite a lot to quote from him, you will find that he lived a life that upon his death, we are grateful that we had him for the period of time we did. He was a gift to the world at birth and a gift to the world in death. I will quote a few teachings from him in the descriptions, so that you can actually hear him speak about issues of life, issues of truth, and understand from where he comes from. also, if you go to John 14 verse 6, Jesus says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. And in reflection to Psalms 36 verse 9, where he says, in your light we see life. So our life is tied to the light of God. And that's why God is important to us. Now, of course, most people say, okay, you are religious. You'll have to side by that. Oh yeah, you're one of those guys. But I want to talk about something very interesting. Because I'm going to depart from this and give you the one verse that determines what a life with God is and a life without God is. But first, I want to talk about a guy called Friedrich Nietzsche. He was a well-known critic of scripture, of biblical truth, and also a philosopher in his age. And one of the most famous stories he told is called the parable of the madman. And that is the famous parable where he says God is dead. And everybody has quoted it. Nietzsche says God is dead, and God is dead and we killed him. And actually, if you read the parable, it's a few odd paragraphs. And again, that will be in the description. You'll hear him say that God is dead and we killed him. And the madman, the opening scene of the madman, which is interesting, is that the madman lights a lantern and enters a village of atheists. And he goes about saying, I am seeking God, I am seeking God. And the atheists look at him and make light of his quest and say, well, is he lost? Has he gotten lost like a little child? Is he afraid of us? Doesn't he want to come out? They're talking about God. You're looking for God, and God, is God lost? I mean that you have to look for him with a lantern in the day. And the concept of the madman in a village of atheists hit me as an analogy of people who don't believe in God, but they can believe a madman because they answer him. How can you, a known madman with a lantern enters a village of atheists and says, I'm looking for God? The first thing the villagers do is make fun of God. They don't say, you're mad, go. So I think if you believe the words of the madman, you might have a problem. So if you, and I will again add that passage in the descriptions for you to read. And always remember the initial concept. It is a madman with a lantern in the day going into a village of atheists saying he is seeking God. Winston Churchill said it very nicely, that the most powerful weapon in the world is the truth. But it has to be kept hidden by a bodyguard of lies. And he was talking about military intelligence. And why that is important is because you have to dig out the truth for yourself as you go about this world. And again, going back to the Bible, I have one verse that talks about a life under God, and if we reflect that verse, we can see what a life without God is like. So in 1 Corinthians 6:12, it says, everything is permissible for me, but not all things are beneficial. Number 2, or second part, everything is permissible to me, but I will not be enslaved by anything. That is it. And then it goes on to talk about that the body, for his body is not his, but it is God's. That is a life with God. Now, if you want to know a life without God, then just say these things as if you will not fight them. So, everything is permissible to me, but all things are beneficial. Everything is permissible to me, and I will be enslaved by anything. That's a life without God. That everything that's permissible, you seek to find a benefit from it. So, for example, everything's permissible to me. It could be, okay, I'm allowed to take drugs. Why? Because there's a benefit. I get to see the stars and go high. And because it's permissible to me, I can be enslaved by it. Because your body is yours. It's not God's. And one of the reasons why it's so easy to say, well, science is the way I want to do, science is the thing I want to support, God is dead and he's nowhere to be found, he didn't show up, and he's not around, he left town, left us to suffer and die. I want to lay out a few facts that may not convince you, but will let you know why I believe there is a God in all these things. And it's because of one word: confidence. I have confidence in God. And the meaning of the word confidence is the feeling or belief that one can have the faith and rely on someone or something. Number 2, the state of feeling certain about the truth of something. That's confidence. Number 3, the telling of private matters or secrets with mutual trust. That's confidence and prayer. In prayer, because you are saying private matters or secrets with mutual trust. You trust that God knows what you're talking about and will not divulge your confidence. The word confidence comes from the Latin, originally confidere, which means have full trust. Now, I want to ask you a question. Do you have confidence in the science behind COVID-19? Do you have confidence in their tests? Do you have confidence in the reports, in the treatment plans, in the vaccine plans? Do you have confidence in the story of how it spreads? Do you have confidence in how it's infecting people? Do you have confidence in what they say? Yes, there is some level of confidence, but can we rely on it? If at one time we're told COVID-19 doesn't go from person to person, and then shortly later say, oh no, it goes from person to person. If one time we're told that COVID-19 has a infection rate of I don't know how fast, then you find in Africa it's going very slowly. Oh no, it's because they don't test. Where is the confidence in the scientific right now? In one area they say you have to test to know. In another area they say this pandemic will be here for a while. If you remember yesterday's discussion about the pandemic state of mind, this is the quarantine state of mind. This is the panic state of mind. This is the OTL state of mind. This is the FTC state of mind. This is the SD state of mind. And if you don't know those initials, OTL stands for obey the law, FTC stands for flatten the curve, SD stands for social distancing. Then, after all this is going on and you're in the pandemic state of mind and the survival state of mind, then comes the post-COVID state of mind or the post-pandemic state of mind. It says, no, we have to open up because of the economy. And in that regard, we have to take some risks. In that line comes the essential state of mind. Only essential businesses can open. So you might find yourself out of a job, out of a business. And lastly, the political state of mind, where all of a sudden the politicians are back in town to talk about how to divide the country along political lines by adding new laws and regulations and curtailing the rights of their citizens. Thus, that is the pandemic state of mind, a highly unreliable scientific assessment of a pandemic. It has led to now a crisis in mental health and well-being, because the panic that science has created cannot be cured by science itself. I think one of the famous speakers, I think it was God.A or someone like that, said, you cannot solve the problems you're in with the thinking that got you into them. It's a paraphrase, but it's there. And lastly, I want to share something that's very interesting. A friend of mine yesterday contacted me and told me, in the process of just chatting after uploading yesterday's video, that they had a newborn and my videos tend to come at the time they are changing diapers. I was kind of happy to hear from the person that she has a newborn boy and life is, interesting. And she was saying, why don't you share about the crisis of child rearing and childbirth during this time of pandemic? And she says, I have seen people, other mothers, delivering their children and not even staying in hospital. As in, they come into hospital in the night, deliver and go home by 10 a.m. And her statement was not to say that, oh my God, it's so bad. It was like, oh my God, it is such a miracle that this can happen and we, the parents, the mothers, do not get infected. They don't want to be in hospital. So now, children born during this time, especially in her situation, which she was telling me, we don't have that long hospital stay. They're able to be born and home in the same day. A thing that used to take several days under normal circumstances. She is blessed to have her child, and she thanks God for being able to receive a blessing in the middle of a pandemic. And I quote, those are her words, a blessing in the middle of a pandemic, a child. Now, let me hit you with some more facts. And there are two studies which I will quote, whereby newborns in most part are not affected heavily by the pandemic, by the COVID-19. They survive. And I'll quote an Italian study and a pediatric paper that was put out, whereby even if the children or the newborns were sick, majority of them after a short time responded well to treatment and their mothers also recovered. You can imagine a child being born to a mother who is COVID positive and they both go home cured. Isn't there a God or not? I put it this way. The most vulnerable of us is the most resistant in this pandemic. And for sure, that is why I say there is a God, and why not? In every war, it's the mothers and the children who suffer the carnage, and the little children die in droves. In every conflict, we had recently in Afghanistan of terrorists who went into a maternity, they broke into a hospital, went into a maternity and shot up the place, killing expectant mothers, including some who are on the delivery table. One child, a baby, survived. Had a bullet in the leg and a doctor had to operate to save the leg. You tell me that in COVID-19, for which we have been told, it's terrible, you find that the most vulnerable are the most resistant. Our children can survive us. Grown-ups could get sick and can get bad, but our children can go through this with minimal stress. They are the more resistant of the lot. They'll get infected, but they won't get wiped out. That's why I say there is a God. And no matter what this pandemic is throwing at us, and all the why questions you ask, understand that He is in charge. According to me, He's in charge of the situation. I started this conversation talking about the birth and death rates of the world. I've shown in wide focus how small, even if we added the COVID deaths in the whole of Africa to the tally of live births, the difference between births and deaths in the country, we would still have over 500,000 new people in this country. Meaning that infection is not death. Infection is like anything else we get. We get infected, we fall sick, we'll get out of it, and we'll survive. And if death is the path that we shall go, then it's the path that we shall go. I urge you, in closing, remember the 4 C's. As usual, wash your hands, cover your face, chill at home, keep your distance. Do the things that protect you. The next 4 C's, do those 4 C's that protect your mind from a mental breakdown. And then add the 1 C for visiting, and overall, the biggest C of all these things is have confidence that what you do is going to help you, how you think is going to help you, and confidence that there is a God, and why not, rather than why. I wish you guys a good night. I ask God's blessings to be upon you and your family. I urge you to read the material that is attached. It's going to be quite elucidating in this area. Again, I'm sorry, I'm not preaching to anyone, but I'm just telling you my point of view, because it's my state of mind. It's the big part of the 2020 state of mind. A confidence that there is a God in control. So have a good night and see you in the next one.